Welcome to another episode of the Trailblazers Experience podcast, where we have candid conversations with amazing women, trailblazers, sharing their career journeys. My next guest, really excited because this is front of mind. I think it should be globally in terms of women's health and contraception, is Lara Solomon, who is the founder of Hoopsy. And we are here to talk about Hoopsy.com. Hello, Lara. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
So, for people who don't know, tuning into the podcast for the first time, what is Hoopsy? What does it do? And why has that been a passion project that's turned into a business for you?
Well, I should probably start at the start. So it all started because I did IVF in 2021. Try and get pregnant. I realised that I'd hit 45, hadn't found anyone to have a baby with, and that it was kind of last chance. So I went to Spain and did 2 rounds of IVF with a donor embryo. Unfortunately, the second one did work, but then I miscarried really early on, a couple of weeks after. So, but in the whole process, I was in a lot of Facebook groups, and I kept seeing women talking about trying to conceive, and then they'd put pictures up on the tests they'd taken, and it wouldn't just be one test, it would sometimes be 10, sometimes 15 tests. And I was just like, what? I had no idea that women use that many tests. And it just kept sticking in my head, like, you literally use this test for 5 minutes, and most of it's plastic. And I just thought, why is it plastic when you're using it for 5 minutes? And after my IVF failed, I just thought, I just still couldn't get this out of my head. And I just thought I could do something about it, because the market leader in pregnancy tests is Clear Blue. They're a big corporate company. They don't care about the planet. And so I just thought, someone's got to do something. Why can't it be me? And so I just did. Found a manufacturer and came up with the Hoopsy Eco Pregnancy Test, which is our first product, which is made from 99% paper instead of basically 90% plastic. Works exactly the same way, over 99% accurate, and is a test that you wheel on. And then we launched that into the UK in July 22, and then I realised after I'd launched, looking at the market, I realised it's not just pregnancy tests that are a problem, it's all lateral flow tests. So that's things like drug tests, STI tests, vitamin tests, diabetes, glucose, ketones, and the COVID, the list goes on. And globally, every year, 25 million kilos of plastic from those test bits into landfill. It's a huge problem, and one that no one is doing anything about. So now at Hoopsy, we're on a mission to eliminate plastic from lateral flow tests. And that's a big mission, because there's over 2 billion tests sold a year, but it's definitely something that's worthwhile and something that I'm really passionate about achieving.
I mean, that's amazing, having your own personal experience being the spark for this. But this is also not your first rodeo in terms of startup. So this is your 6th venture.
Yes.
I'm interested to understand, what is the curiosity, the catalyst for starting multiple businesses, and why has this one stuck that you're saying this is the one?
Yes, I remember when you asked me about that in the email, I was just like, you're like, what's next? I was like, no, nothing else. This is it. Actually, no, I tell a lie. There is something else, but it's... So what I want to do is, once I've sold Hoopsy, which won't be for probably another 8 years, then I want to start a VC fund and invest back into women's health. But anyway, so that's not really, it's kind of a business, but not really. But anyway, going back to this, all of the businesses, my first business started because growing up, my dad always had his own business, and my dad always taught us to basically think everyone was an idiot until they proved themselves otherwise, which is not necessarily the best outlook, but it did mean that I went into FMCG marketing as my first role. And at that time, you just basically, it was very formulaic, and there was no room for trying anything new. And I just really wanted to try different things. And so I started my first business. I was actually on holiday, or actually on honeymoon at the time. with my now ex-husband, and I saw this mobile phone stock cover, and I just thought that's so cool. And so I decided that that's what I was going to do, because at the time when you had a mobile phone, there wasn't covers to fit every style of phone. And so the stock was, you put on your phone, it stopped you from getting scratched, it personalized it. And then from there, basically, other businesses came about out of passions or things that I noticed, that mostly from things I needed, that I then looked into the market and there was no one else doing it, and other people also needed it. So it's kind of came out of necessity and passion, I think. But this one I think is stuck because I feel like it's such a global thing. It's such a, I guess I feel like, and I don't know how you say this without sounding like a bit of a, I'm saying up myself, but I feel like I really want to make a mark on the world. I don't mean that I have to be like Florence Nightingale and be talked about for the next hundreds of years, but more about I often think about what's the point in us being here? Why are we on Earth? What are we doing here? Like, what's the point? It's not very long. And I find that quite a depressing thought. So I feel like if while I'm here, I can actually do something that helps the planet, helps the people, then I feel like there is a point of being here. So I guess it's all kind of comes down to that. Like, I really want to make a difference.
Yeah, so it comes down, even I think it's a reflection of your own personal values, isn't it? It's like what do you believe in? And when you look at the pyramid of when companies are now massive about what are their mission statement, their values, their principles, it has to start from somewhere. And if at the core you're thinking of people and planet, then that's already a good starting point, isn't it? And a kind of
Definitely. Yeah.
catalyst too. So reflecting on your experience, because obviously I would consider you a serial entrepreneur. And I was talking about this before we started recording, of how I'm so in awe of people who have an idea and say, this is a problem I'm trying to solve, and then just going with it. For the audience, let's talk about launching a startup, because it's fraught with challenges. First of all, are you bootstrapped? Talk to me about funding challenges. How has that been, especially when it relates to Hoopsy and you as an entrepreneur?
Most of my first business was funded by my parents. Well, they lent me capital, £6,000. I repaid them in full and gave them a round the world trip. So they got a very good return on their investment. Since then, I've bootstrapped all of my businesses, until not except for the last one and this one. Basically, with Hoopsy, I bootstrapped to start with. I had a part-time job. I used to do customer service for insurance companies. People want to make insurance claims. Oh, worst job in the world. But anyway. And then I raised some money through equity crowd fundraising and also through angel investors. The thing that I think, it depends on your business as to how value you can, or how much you can bootstrap. If you're a service-based business, so it's just you providing a service, it's much easier to bootstrap, because the only thing you really need is a computer and a phone, which you probably already have. But if you're a product-based business, you've got to buy a stock and ship it and store it somewhere and all of that kind of thing, which means it can be quite challenging to actually bootstrap, because you need a lot of cash up front, which is partly why with this one, I think for the first, I raised the money about 9 months after I started working on the business. So just before the first order came through. But I've also put in quite a lot of my own cash. So it's one of those things where people say, it's better to bootstrap and, you don't have to deal with investors and stuff. But I think it really depends on who your investors are. A lot of my angel investors are people I know really well. They're supporting me because they believe in what I'm trying to do and they want it to work. They're not the kind of people that call me up every day demanding, why haven't I made them $1 million or whatever. So I think it just really depends on who your investors are. And that is one thing I would say when it comes to fundraising. I believe you have to be very picky. I have turned down money. My bank is still whinging at me for turning it down, but I think it was the right thing to do for the business, because it just wasn't a good fit with what we wanted to do. So yeah, it's just about being selective.
And I guess it also comes with experience. So this is your sixth venture. So you've been through those various iterations of understanding, start a business, what good looks like, what you're willing to give up, as well, and what your runway in terms of your cash flow should look like. I think, like you said, the first one, your parents got their return on investments. All they wanted was a trip around the world. Who knew? then with others, they believe in your, I guess, in your mission and what you're trying to do, tackling something. I mean, plastic is a major problem. It's a byproduct of another industry that's just, now they're putting the onus on us to make it better, when actually the products produced could alleviate it. I can go off on a tangent, environmental tangent.
I know, we could,
well.
I know, it's crazy. And I think that's one of the things that frustrates me mostly. I mean, my investors are normally people that just get it straight away. Like, I did a pitch on stage last year, and it was 3 minutes. And as I came off the stage, this lady came up to me and went, "I love it, I want to invest." And I was like, okay, great. Like, there was no like, "Hi, my name is." That was literally what she said. And she's now one of my investors. And I think it's finding those people that really get it, really understand, and they know, because we're a medical device, and it's not a quick win. It's not like, you read all these things about SaaS businesses, how they double, treble revenue months on months, 3,000% growth in a year, whatever it is. And that's just not possible with a product like ours, because you won't even have a product normally within the first year, because it tends to take 18 months to 2 years to actually get approvals. So it's just, I think when it comes to fundraising, there's so much out there that you read and they think, oh, that's the Bible. It is so different for every business. And I think that's one thing you just need to, as a founder, you just need to be aware of, that just because X has done it like this doesn't mean that that is right for you.
And I love the way you differentiate between, is it a service you're providing or a product? Because those obviously are two different themes, and they're two different ways of looking at it. But for someone who's listening and says, oh my days, right? Okay, you're in the medical, industry, health tech, femtech industry. How do you even go about that? Like, this was a different business from what you've done before. Where did you even start in terms of looking at approvals? And there was a problem that you were trying to solve, but break it down for me. What was like your 5-step process? I'm sure it was longer than that.
5 big steps, not teeny mini ones in between. I think, well, first of all, I should just say for people listening that I don't have a medical background or a scientific background. So my background's always been in business. So basically, my first thing, I got a pregnancy test, and if you open up one of those midstream tests, you'll see inside this little strip of paper. And when I looked at this, and I just thought, why isn't that piece of paper just bigger and we don't have the plastic? It just seemed like a real no-brainer. So then I thought, well, all I need to do, and this sounds quite simple, but I thought, this is what I was thinking, all I need to do is work out what size I want it to be, and then find someone to manufacture it. And if they're already making pregnancy tests, surely they can just make it bigger. How hard is it? So I drew my test size out on a piece of paper. So my first prototype was literally a rectangle.
Actually, yeah.
And I then contacted manufacturers around the world. I contacted over 100. And most people were like, yeah, we can do this. And it wouldn't be what I wanted. And there was only one manufacturer that was willing to work with me. And then, like, part of the challenge was that, because I'm not medical scientific, it was like understanding what they were doing, understanding the regulatory approvals. They already had approval for a product that we could use. So we could use the approval because we weren't making a huge change. But then it was like understanding that, was that good? Was that right? Was that regulatory approval right? How could I use that? So it was a lot of researching, a lot of reading, a lot of then phoning people up and finding, like, even with people I knew, finding people that knew people that I could talk to and running things past them. Then trying to look at what other companies had done and see the steps they took to get to market. And there was a lot of Googling. And the problem with medical devices is that, because it is so regulated, you can't really stuff it up. Not as in it's easy to not stuff it up, but as in, if you stuff it up, you can't sell the product. So you actually need to there's not much leeway in there. So you have to really know what you're doing. And so it was a lot of talking to people and experts, and some people paying experts, or even just calling up those regulatory bodies for each of the countries, calling them up and just being like a complete, I've never done this before, I don't know what to do, I don't know what's the steps, and getting them to talk me through it as well. And doing some online courses, like paying for them and doing online courses to just educate myself more about it. So yeah, a lot of research and Googling before I could actually get the product to market to try and understand it.
Yeah, so it's basically been what, 18, 24 months before you could actually launch the product. Is that so the timeline that sort of happened, or?
Well, the first product we had, because the manufacturer already had regulatory approval, I started talking to them in December and we got a product to market in July. Because they already had approval, we didn't need to get our own approval. But now we're working on a new version of the product, which is 100% plastic free. And because it is completely new, that will take us 18 months to 2 years to get to market because of the approvals. It depends on the country, though. Each country has different times and different approval processes, just to make it a little bit more fun.
Yeah, I was going to say, because when you're launching that product online, you're sort of looking at the countries with the least barrier to entry, but also where you can drive the most sales, isn't it? It's like catch 22 as well, which plays an important part.
Yeah, it's so I've done a lot of research into which countries use medical devices the most, and in terms of consumers. And it's like, for example, it's mostly the Western world because they can afford to pay for it. But like for pregnancy tests, the top 5 countries in the world are the US, the UK, Germany, India, and I can't remember what was the last one. It'll come back to me. But it's all very much wealthy countries. India, we don't think it was wealthy necessarily, but that top like 5% of the population are very wealthy. And it's with the trend that's moving towards people want to manage their own health. They don't want to have to go to the doctor for everything, or they can't because there's a 3-month wait, or they just can't get an appointment, or it costs too much. And so people want to own their own health. So there's a massive move towards home testing, and that will obviously impact us, but also it's looking at who actually cares about planet, because you can have a big country with a lot of people that all want to do home testing, but if they couldn't give a stuff about pollution and the environment, then they're not going to buy an environmentally friendly option. So you kind of got to balance up all these things, and also look at fertility rates. Well, when we're looking at pregnancy, we're looking at which countries, like for example, when China had the one-child policy, obviously that's changed now, but when they had that, the chances are you're not going to be doing as much trying to conceive, because once you've had your child, that's pretty much it. So whereas other countries that don't have those rules will have it will mean different things to you as a business. So there's a lot of weighing things up, and then it's like, well, how easy is it to get FDA approval in the US versus getting approval in the UK or getting approval in the EU? And then it's finding out things like, if you've got FDA approval and then you want to go into Canada, it's much easier than going into Canada and then trying to go into the US. So there's a lot. And I think a lot of it comes down to, someone actually said to me, a potential investor said to me last year, he said, if you'd known all this stuff before you started, would you still have started? Because it is a lot. It's not like just launching just a jumper brand or, a non-medical device brand. And I like to think I would. I mean, some days it just drives me up the wall, but I do enjoy a challenge and I do enjoy learning. And I think that that's part of the journey, is finding out how you do this. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, and a lot of investors, having spoken to so many women who are entrepreneurs, saying they're investing in you, in the person. So are you resilient? Can you overcome these challenges? If there's a hurdle that is thrown at you, how do you react in that situation versus I'm just going to plug money into this business? They are investing in you. How resilient are you? What if there's, you've got issues with distribution or production? How are you going to react then? That's basically a main catalyst, I think, for that too.
I think you're right. I definitely think you're right. And it is that whole, if you're going to give up at the first hurdle, you're never going to have a successful business, because there's never just one hurdle. There's so many hurdles to overcome. And we're now at the stage with Hoopsy, I'm now at the stage where we raised last year, but we ran out of money. And last year was a horrendous year to try and raise. And I did get offered money, but I turned it down at the time. And so I've now working part-time because I'm really passionate about what I want to do. I'm really passionate about Hoopsy, and I don't want to stop doing it. But at the same time, I've pretty much burnt through all my savings, so I can't just live on fresh air. So it's that compromise, and that, are you willing to in some ways take a step back to be able to move forward? And I think a lot of it, when you're running your own business, is like that. It is often you do take a few steps back to take one giant leap forward, and you've got to work out if you're willing to do that compromise as well. Like, are you willing to give up things, and how important are those things to you? Like, if you're someone that says, oh, I have to have that exotic holiday every year or whatever, it's are you willing to give that up? So it's just different priorities, I think.
Yeah, and honestly, Laura, I mean, that vulnerability and that honesty of what the journey of a founder is so important. So people, we live in a social media where people era where people only showing this is what my business is doing and this is how I'm turning over, but they're not telling you the journey that it took time before. I mean, you're not yet at that stage where you can give up working to be 100% in the business. You're not there yet. It's coming. You've got a great product, great idea, but you're not there yet. And that's okay. And I think it's important for the audience to hear that so that they don't give up on their dream as well.
Definitely. And I think the thing is that when I did get funding, I was full-time in the business and I was earning a salary, not huge. But then when we ran out of money, it was like, well, I've got two choices. I either quit and get a full-time job and don't do Hoopsy, or I basically find another way to bring in some money and keep doing it on the side, and know that it is a temporary glitch and not a forever glitch. But I think it's sometimes can be hard to do that because you kind of like, you feel like potentially like you failed, and you haven't failed. It's just life, isn't it? Nothing's as straightforward, unfortunately. There is no straight line to the goal. There's a lot of wiggles and turns, and you just gotta go with it. And yeah, it can be challenging, but I think if you're passionate enough and you believe in what you're trying to do, then it takes you through and it gets you there. So yeah, it's
I mean,
yeah, it's good.
you've talked about so many challenges that you faced, and we also talked about just in the pre-podcast about how many times you've pitched already. So over 100 pitches, probably. You're probably a pitch expert. And one of the milestones is you pitched for 3 minutes and someone said, "Yeah, I get it. I'm going to invest." So there are milestones, isn't it? Little celebratory moments that you just need to take with you along the way.
Oh, definitely. And I think it's like, so at the moment, for example, we're working on the second version of the products. And initially I thought I'd have to I know how we're going to do it. We filed a patent on it, but I'm not a chemist. I need someone to do that bit for me. And initially I was going to pay someone to do it. And then I applied for this program called the West Midlands Health Tech Innovation Accelerator. Sorry, it's very long acronyms. And they basically, through this program, they've now funded the whole development, second version of the product. And it's just like, oh my God, to have someone that, not someone, but an organization that believes in what you're trying to do, so much so that they are willing to do that. It's government funded, but it's still like, it's not like it's easy to get the money. It's those kind of wins are just such a good feeling that you're not on your own anymore, because as a solo founder it can be hard as well. And the fact that I've got this team, and the lady that runs it, she's been through fertility challenges, so she 110% gets it, and so she really believes in what I'm trying to do. And she was like, oh, we could do this and we could do that, and it's so those kind of things really make you think, I know I'm doing the right thing. I know this is going to be great. It's just going to take longer than I expected to start with.
And how did you find out about the program? Is there a lot to do with you putting yourself out there, networking, speaking to as many people, picking up the phone, getting on the Zooms, the Slack channels, anything that involves communication outside of your home? Has that paid dividends for you, would you say?
Oh, definitely. I mean, so when I first started Hoopsy, I was living in Australia, in Sydney, and we basically got approval in EU before Australia. So I was like, right, we're going to launch in the UK first. So we launched in July 22, and I moved over to the UK in November 22. And I've got family here because obviously I'm from the UK originally, but I have been living in Australia for 20 years. So I don't have a really good business network. So I basically was starting from zero. So when I first moved over, I was staying with family and friends, and I did some house sitting and stuff. And I was going to 2 or 3 networking events a week, all different ones, just to meet people, get to know people, and make those connections. And now I've got an amazing network of people around me, but it is work. You do have to actually go out and find it. And I personally prefer face-to-face physical networking rather than online Zooming and stuff. And it's just about putting yourself forward. Like every time there's a pitch competition, I'd be like, yeah, I'll do it. And just putting yourself out there again and again and again, and people get to see what you're doing. And it's really interesting because what I'm doing is quite different. I've had people who will take pitch meetings with me, and afterwards they go, yeah, I'm not going to invest, but we just loved it. It sounds so fascinating. I had to know more. And I was just like, well, yeah, great. But it's rather annoying because you knew you weren't going to give me the money. But it's one of those things where who you know is so important. Actually, a very funny story. I was living in Cambridge for a few weeks last year, and I was single, and I went to the singles party, and it was fun. Just had to chat with a few people, and then there was this older guy there, and so I'm chatting to him, and then it turned out that he was dating the girl that was running the party. We were chatting, and then he asked me what I did, and blah. But it turned out that he's the head of AstraZeneca in the UK. And it was like, what are the chances? And, so you never know when you're going to meet people that, like, could be great connections to have. Obviously, like, we haven't sold out to AstraZeneca yet or anything, but, like, he's someone that I'm, now in contact with, and you just don't know until you put yourself out there. And then I think a lot of it is about going that extra mile. So there was a guy, he was north, and he in the UK, and they bought our product to sell on their online pharmacy store. He'd been doing online pharmacy for a long time, I think about 6 or 7 years, and he seemed like a lovely guy. And I just said, can I come up and see you and just chat to you about the industry, because I really don't know that much about it? And he was like, yeah, no problem. So I popped up and I saw him for 2 hours, and he was so amazingly helpful and introduced me to so many people based on that one meeting. But I made the effort to go and see him and chat to him and ask. And I think a lot of it is about that, asking for help, putting yourself out there, and that's what people respond to. And I think it's just a nice person as well, because you can't just go and expect a handout or expect stuff from people, but you just have to be genuine, and people will get that. And I think especially in the entrepreneurial world, a lot of people, they know what it was like when they started, and it was hard, so they're happy to give back and help other people that are coming up.
If you think in hindsight, Lara, because you've talked about a lot of things, that you've got a business background, you're very curious, lots of Googling, you're outgoing, putting yourself out there. When you think about the foundations of you growing up, now connecting the dots in hindsight, what do you think are sort of the qualities that maybe your parents or your upbringing instilled in you that are helping you?
I think one of them is that we were always encouraged to, one of them was always encouraged to follow our passions and do things that we enjoyed. And I think it was never you have to put up with that forever. It was always like, give it a proper go. And then if you decide you don't like it, want to do it, then you can. So you couldn't just do one. Like, I remember my sister and I did ballet lessons. We couldn't just do one ballet lesson and then like never go again. We had to give it a decent shot. And I think that's part of it, because often at the start things aren't great, but they do get great. And then I think when I was growing up, I was doing a lot of horse riding, and we worked at a riding stable, my sister and I, and we learned a really strong work ethic from being there, massively strong. And I remember my mum and dad aren't around anymore, but I remember my mum always saying, that's the reason that you two have done so well in life, is because of that really strong work ethic of, you have to do this a certain way, this has to be achieved. You can't just turn up for an hour and then decide you're not going to do anymore. I guess it's partly been given responsibility at quite a young age. You know, we were teaching riding, we were taking groups out at probably like 16, 17 years old, which is quite a big responsibility. So I think it's all those kind of things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something about consistency, discipline. If you're going to start
Yeah.
something, finish it. The reason why I ask this is, they might be younger. I feel like the younger generation are struggling with what they want to do. And sometimes it's right in front of you doing something that you're passionate about, but it's the consistency piece, isn't it? Sticking it through, just making sure you finish what you've started. And if it didn't work, then at least you tried.
Yeah, I really think a lot of it is actually just trying and not giving up just because it's hard. Because it's funny, there's a cartoon that I saw a while ago. I think it was on LinkedIn, and there was a picture of a diamond in a mine, and then there was the mine shaft like the earth, I guess. And at one point they had the guy got to like here, and here's the diamond, and he gave up, and the other guy got to here, and here was the diamond, and he gave up. And it's like you never know how close you are to that diamond or to whatever it is you're trying to achieve. It could be, minutes away, it could be years away, but you won't know unless you try. And I think a lot of it comes down to that, is actually really giving it proper go. And you know yourself when you give things a proper go or not. You know that and if you're only doing it half-heartedly, then is it really the right thing for you to do is the other thing.
I mean, definitely. It's one of those lessons where constantly I have to remind myself about consistency, discipline, manifestation. Just keep going, because you'll be able to connect everything at the end. So talking about Hoopsy and the vision, you are clearly looking to make a difference, I guess, in the world. Femtech and sustainability, very big for you. Where do you see Hoopsy going? So you said 8 years, sell and cash out and then move into the VC space, which I think is amazing, because we know, I think it's statistics say less than 2% of funding
Yeah.
is going towards women. How do you envision your VC fund in the future to be different to others?
Oh my God, I haven't really thought that far ahead. I'm still kind of trying to get that £100 million that I'd like to cash out for. But I've got a friend that I'm planning to run it with, and I find that we, in terms of society and in terms of backers, VC money or angel money, we get caught up in these trendy things like AI, blah blah, whatever it is, and then it's like that doesn't mean that it's a good business. And just because everyone's doing it doesn't mean you have to do it. And my dad always used to say to me, if everyone else jumped off the cliff, would you jump off the cliff as well? And it does feel that similar kind of thing, that you need to look for things where, I feel like you need to look for things where nothing has changed for a long time in that industry. So take the lateral flow test. The first one came out in 1988. Nothing has changed since 1988. So was a long time ago, nearly 40 years ago. And so I think that that's what we need to look at industries that have been overlooked. I mean, you look at with women's health, in terms of research into women's health, more money has been spent on Viagra development than women's health. And it's just these horrifying statistics, and yet half the population is female. So I think it's about finding those spaces where people haven't done any innovation for a while, and finding those passionate entrepreneurs that want to make a difference, and want to do things differently. But also, I think that you want people that are in the trenches, that in terms of the founders, the people that want you to get their hands dirty. Like, I meet some founders and they're like, they want to raise money because they want to spend it on whatever, Google ads or something, I don't know, but they haven't even tried to do it themselves first. And you're like, well, if you haven't tried, then, and you're just gonna literally just hand it over to someone else, then you're not really the person that is going to keep going when things get tough. Because it's like we were saying earlier, it's not always, you can't throw money at every solution, and you might not even have the money to throw at it. So you need to learn to do a lot with not much. And I think that's the thing we've got to look for as well.
Yeah, what's the purpose of the funding? Isn't it that I've read a few pitch decks where you're saying, so when you receive this money, what are you going to do? Well, we need to acquire new customers. So why aren't you doing that now? Why aren't you on these social media platforms? Proof of concept is there. Why aren't you doing that right now with what you have?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of where you sort of think, wow, when they do receive this money, it will run out very quickly because they haven't thought it through and done as we know, proof of concept, isn't it, themselves, as a business. But I love what you said about getting back to the basics of, there's so many sectors, industries where there's a mentality of we've always done it this way. And I truly believe those are the ones that won't be there in 10, 15 years. It's the ones that innovate, that want to change the status quo, make it a better planet for everyone, not just in the first world, but the third world, and lifting women up who make 50% of the population. And another thing, if we're talking about consistency, I know Warren Buffett is a man, but if you look at his portfolio of businesses, he's been consistent in what he invests throughout. So it does tell you, well, if you find a product or solve a problem that is necessary for everyone globally, then obviously it'll pay dividends over those years. That is the formula, isn't it? It doesn't have to be some sexy AI, sexy company that VC funds are rushing towards, but there are lots of women with great ideas that aren't getting the funding that they need, and yet they're solving a day-to-day problem.
I know.
Fires me up. Yeah.
No, I'm with you on that. I'm just like, and then you see the next announcement that some SaaS bro company has just been given $1 zillion, and you're just like, seriously, they'll burn through that in a year and then go, oh well, and do something else. It's, yeah, I know.
It's such a great mission. Well, when you get to that stage in 8 years, I'd be happy to have that conversation as well, because I feel we need more. The more women we have in VC fund companies I think the more we have, because I've got another friend of mine who I'm hoping to bring on the podcast, and she started a VC fund, but in Africa. And she's talked about all these ideas, but even getting money into that pool of that fund is so difficult. She's very educated. She's got the consultancy background. She's got the finance background. She knows all these women, but to get people to invest into her fund, so difficult, which is crazy.
I know, and that's the thing. It's just it's still a very much an old boys network, that whole VC. And then if you look at angels, there aren't actually that many female angel investors, and men just don't necessarily, not all men, but a lot of men don't get that whole femtech space and don't really see it as important, and so you kind of, it's quite an uphill battle. And then you add in the sustainability piece for us on top, and you're like, yeah, if you've not got the other things, you're definitely not going to get to there. And so it's quite challenging. And I think we really need to move the needle on that. And I feel like the best way to do it is kind of inside with your own money to invest it that way. And I think the other thing we've just got to think about is that it's not just when and I think this can be for anyone, like you don't have to invest lots of money. Like, it's interesting, some of the ladies that are in my crowdfunding invested £50, so not very much at all. For most people that work full-time, investing £50 in a startup is not a huge amount of money. And I think that we can all help startups in our own really small way just by doing that £50. And I don't think you realise that they do all add up, and that does actually end up in a great result for that business owner, essentially, down the track. And yes, you only own a tiny, weeny piece of the pie, but it's not just about owning part of the company. It's also about supporting these ideas, because if we don't support them, then they won't happen, and then nothing ever improves. And so we can't just say, I don't have money to invest, because most people could probably afford to invest £50, or, or if they don't invest, then supporting business owners, small business owners, and shopping that way rather than shopping at Primark or, wherever you like to shop. But there's lots of ways we can support businesses without money. Even just by following them on Instagram or telling friends about them. There's lots of things we can do, and I don't think it has to be financial. And then if it is financial, I think the other thing to think about is that you don't get quick returns. If there was a magic bullet, someone would have discovered it. We would have it already. But you've got to think, you're putting this money in. It might work, it might not work, but at the end of the day, you're supporting something you think should happen, and that might take 10 years. And I think for us, that's what it will be like. It will be 10 years by the time from started to when we cash out, and I can actually start helping other female founders. But yeah,
I love
so
the
much
fact
to do,
that
so little time.
I know, and you're playing the long game. Basically,
Yes.
you've started a few businesses. I feel like from everything that you've been saying and just reading about your business, you're playing the long game. You found something that you're going to stick at, and it's going to evolve as well as you grow and learn more about the industry
Oh,
and the sector. And it's important to shine a light on that and finding your allies as well, isn't it? Whether you're going for a singles dating event, talk about your business, girl. Oh, or it's what do you do? And being passionate about, like you said, I think you've mastered the 3-minute pitch. You've mastered that to a T. Is what am I doing? Why is it important? And how can I grab your attention? Because we all have a very short attention span. I think there's stats that says about how
we
short
do.
our attention span is. So it's really exciting and refreshing to hear your story as well about that. So yeah, Lara, keep going. I love this.
And yes, book me in for 8 years' time.
Yes, we will be having that phone call coming through saying, "Do you remember me?" I said, "Yes, I do. Is it time? We're ready. We're ready to do this."
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So talking about, fertility and sustainability, you've been very vulnerable in sharing your story and why this means so much to you, how your own IVF journey has even led to this business. Let's talk about female empowerment, and what are ways, if there's someone who's listening who's an entrepreneur, that they can get into the space or find a community and find their tribe to help them through this journey.
There's millions of places, and I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that. I think it's a case of, it depends what you're doing in terms of what sector you're in. And then from there, it depends on what stage you're at. There's loads of ways. If you're really early, things like accelerators are great because lots of them are free. Get to hang out in a cohort with other founders, and that's really good because you get to learn so much from each other. And also, the first accelerator I did was Outlet, and I just felt like I'd found my people. I was like, oh my God, these are like, I just think we just totally got each other. I just loved it.
And for someone who doesn't know, what is an accelerator program?
Okay.
What is that? Yeah.
So, and it's normally about 3 months and long, and it depends. It can be part-time, it can be full-time. You do a few hours a week or more, and you learn things about business. So it might be things like, learning how to identify your customer, learning about how to get product market fit, learning about accounting, learning about how to actually start the company in terms of what do you need to register and where, all of that kind of stuff. And also normally you have a mentor as part of that. So someone that you can talk to about any challenges, bounce ideas off. And then there's normally, you do some kind of exercises that will actually move your business forward. So it might be using like a lean canvas methodology, and it helps you identify areas of your business that you need to focus on or things you need to improve or tighten up. And so it can be, and like I said, there's loads, there's online ones, there's physical in-person ones. There's somewhere at the end you can pitch for investment, and there's ones at different levels as well, depending if you've got literally this. What I did Antler, it was my last business, and the Antler program is a global one, and it was free to do it, just has to get through interviews, and everyone went in as just a single person, and then you found a co-founder while you were there, you came up with an idea while you were there, and you pitched it, got investment or not. If you got investment, you stayed on for another section of the program. So it can be a really good way to get to learn more about starting a business, as well as build a really good network of people. And the other thing, there's loads of online groups, like one that I love, which is for women that are a bit further along. It's called By Women Built, and that's basically women built companies, and it's so supportive and helpful. But I mean, you can also start your own. So I went to a networking event last year, and as I was walking out, I met this lady Thea, and we just hit it off. And I just, you meet someone, you think, oh, you're my person. We really got on, and we kept in touch. And then she said, oh, I'm starting this WhatsApp group for female founders, and I'm just inviting people that I want to invite, that I've met, that I think will get on with each other. And so I've been in that group now for only about 18 months. And that has been so supportive, and we're all in different industries. So there's some people that do products, some people do services, some people do digital, some people do physical products. So there's no kind of commonality in terms, but the commonality is that we've all been through the same stuff. We're all done the fundraising journey. We all had that nightmare customer. We've all had those days where we just want to curl up and hide under the duvet and cry. And, that's what it is. So you can completely form your own group. The other one for women, Female Founders Rise, is a really good one because they have in-person networking events. And then if you're on Slack, there's loads of Slack groups. If there's just a bazillion places to look. But the best thing I think is just to go out in terms of go to some networking events. And I always choose ones where I think I'll enjoy it regardless of who I meet. So this one where there's someone speaking that I love to hear, and then that regardless of what happens, you're still going to get something out of the evening, so it doesn't feel like it's a waste. It may be going to pitch events and watching other people pitching and getting ideas from that, and then going up and chatting to people afterwards. There's so many ways to get started and so many ways to connect with people. But I'm happy if people want ideas. I'm happy for people to reach out. And I say this every time I do a podcast, and no one has reached out to me yet. Maybe someone listening will be the first person.
You just have to keep saying it, I think, Lara, because it's the first step, isn't it? Sliding into someone's DMs to say, I need help. I've started a business. Yeah,
exactly. And that's the thing. I mean, there's been randoms where one Slack group I was in, I was like, I'm really struggling with the customer journey on my website, and I just couldn't seem to get it quite right. And I said, anyone willing to help me? I knew no one in that group. And I had 4 people saying, yeah, here you go, here's my number, call me. And I called them, I met with them in person, but a lot of it is about being vulnerable and saying, I don't know, need some help. And people will willingly help. I mean, not full time all day, every day, but they're quite happy to give up time to help people if they feel like that they're actually being of value to that person.
I guess also being specific about what you're asking for, isn't it? Because you're saying, I need help. Okay, with what exactly? Being specific about what challenge you have, I think, is, apart from the first step of taking it, of reaching out to someone, is very important too.
Yeah, because you do get people that email and say, I really want to chat to you about your journey. And you're like, okay.
Well, which part of my journey? Which one do you want to hear? Yeah.
And then it's just
what exactly do you want to know?
I know it's kind of you're right. Being specific is really it's much easier for the user to then decide if it's something you want to or can help with. So normally when I wanted help with this customer journey, I was very specific on what I wanted help with. And I've got another friend who actually she lives in Canada, and we have a catch up I met her actually hilariously. I bumped into her at London Tech Week, and she was just someone I sat next to while I was waiting for an event to start, and we just hit it off and got on really well, and then swapped details. And then I went to Canada for an event. She introduced me to loads of people in femtech space, and then we've kept in touch. And often I'll just reach out to her and say, so I'm thinking about doing this. Have you got any experience in this? Is it something you can, talk me through or tell me how it works? And just even that kind of thing is really useful, because if you never done it, you don't know. And there's often pitfalls and things, and people are quite happy to share their experience for half an hour. So it's so interesting this day and age.
I remember, Lara, when I started the podcast, I knew nothing about podcasting. And the first thing was, right, I'm going to get someone on Fiverr to edit the first one for me. And the guy was so amazing. He said, what he basically said was he sent the brief. So I'd spoken to 2 people. One said, here's the brief, fill it out or do it for you, pay. And I'd already done that. But then the second one, who actually I should have gone with, but I learned more from him. He then said, you sent the brief, so you have an understanding of tech. You have an understanding of all the terminologies. You're very clear of what you want. Can I ask why you haven't done this yourself instead of paying me? And I said, because I don't know how. He literally walked me through what platforms to use, how to start. He said, just start. It will take longer the first time to edit. This is the software you need. He knew I had the understanding, and the best decision ever. So there's a lot of things of just starting, but also being curious, like you said, spending time on YouTube, Google, finding people in a similar space. I joined a Slack group of people trying to podcast, and there were all kinds of questions they were asking on there. And I've learned so much. It takes me now 15, 20 minutes to edit a podcast and post it and all the tech stuff. So I am the engineer, the editor, the sound person, the motivator, the active listener. I know it sounds like a small thing saying, oh, just podcasting.
It's huge.
It's massive. And also
Yeah.
getting the person who's a guest to feel comfortable enough to tell their story authentically as well is a big thing. So I'm a big believer on being specific, but on your ask, but also going out there and doing it anyway.
Yeah. Some people haven't got back to me who I've asked. Like, I emailed the head of Boots, the chairman of Boots. He hasn't come back to me on my ask, but you got to try.
Well, if you're listening when this is posted on the Trailblazers Experience LinkedIn page, take Lara's call, please. For just 5-10 minutes. Hear her out.
Exactly.
Oh,
Exactly.
brilliant. Yeah. So just to finish off the podcast, we always have a section called the Trailblazers Takeaway Experience takeaway tips. So for someone who's fast forwarded to the end, what are 3 Trailblazer takeaway tips you want to leave with them about your journey and being a female founder, just being Lara in general?
Okay. Ooh.
Life hacks, Lara.
Life hacks.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't know if there are any life hacks. Hard work. But I think what we're talking about just now about asking is a huge hack, as it were, because and the way I think about it, and everyone goes, "Oh, it's too scary to ask." It's like, what is the worst that's going to happen? They'll say no, and then it's not like that you're going to get decapitated or anything bad is going to happen. They'll just say no, and you'll be like, "Oh, okay, next one." And I think that that's really important. I think being yourself is really important in terms of being genuine and I know that's really trendy now, being genuine and vulnerable and stuff, but people can see through it if you're trying to be something you're not. And remember, it's, there's that old adage about people buy from people they like, people they know and they trust. And it's the same when you're talking to people. People are not gonna like you or want to help you or even want to talk to you if you're not being genuine. These all are quite generic, and I feel like there are lots of things that people say a lot, but I think the third thing is about just doing something you love, because if you're doing something you love, it doesn't feel like work. I mean, no one loves it 100% of the time, don't get me wrong, but I think that then it's like when you do stay up late doing stuff, or probably your first podcast was probably like a marathon of editing, you love it, so it doesn't feel like work, and so therefore it just makes life a lot more enjoyable. So I think that would be my hacks. Yeah, doing what you love, ask, and being yourself.
Lara, this has been amazing. I mean, hoopsy.com if you're looking for your eco-friendly, sustainable pregnancy tests. And as Lara said, supporting a business is not just maybe buying the product, but also supporting it on the socials to get those numbers up so that she can continue to pitch and find investment. And it's been such a pleasure speaking to you, Lara, and just hearing your authentic story. I've learned so much as well. I've never spoken to someone who's been a serial entrepreneur and started many businesses and now come to the passion project that they're interested in. But they've been so many nuggets that you've shared. So thank you for that.
Okay, I've really enjoyed chatting. Thank you.
So for the audience, this has been the Trailblazers Experience podcast. I ask one favor, tell another woman about the podcast, because we really want this to be about candid conversations about every aspect of a career journey, whether you're an entrepreneur, employed, in leadership, whatever sector. We just want to showcase these trailblazer women. So please remember to follow, share, like, subscribe, and download us on all streaming platforms. Until then, thank you very much.